Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's edition of the on-record portion of the Rockbridge Report. I'm Katie Geddes. Here with me today is City Manager for Lexington, Jon Ellestad. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Katie.
So I'd like to start first off with your job. What are some of your day-to-day activities as the City Manager for Lexington?
Well, as my children would tell you, I sit in the office and talk on the telephone and attend meetings all the time. That's their impression of what I do. But my job is basically as the Chief Executive Officer of the municipal corporation. The City Council hires me, and I'm charged with operating the city organization, the paid organization of the city per se.
Okay, and are there like specific organizations or functions that you look over specifically?
Well, we've got 5 direct departments: Public Works Department, of course, there's streets and garbage collection, those sorts of things. A utility processing department, which operates both our water treatment plant and our wastewater treatment plant. Finance department that, of course, handles the finances. A police department, and a planning and development department that does the municipal planning, building inspection, oversees our regulatory processes. And then there are a number of other offices in the city, very smaller functions, like an office on youth, of course the commissioner and the treasurer, the commissioner of revenue and the treasurer, things like that. But that's primarily the city. Most of our functions, or not most, but many of our functions that a normal city has are provided by regional organizations, like the library, the whole court system, a central dispatch, a regional jail. Those are things that normally cities provide that we provide only through cooperative programs with our other jurisdictions in the region.
Okay, and I know that before you worked for Lexington, you worked for the city of Fairfax, Virginia, as their deputy city manager. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between, I guess, being city manager and deputy city manager for a larger city?
It's really hard to describe the difference until you're actually in it. It's significant. There just isn't the feeling that the buck stops with you when you're an assistant. You've always got a level that you can take something to. When you're the city manager, the staff is all looking to you to either make a decision, make them a recommendation, tell them what they should be doing, providing direction. It's just almost a night and day difference as far as the actual responsibility goes, because the city manager is where the authority lies, and with staff it's just not the same.
Okay, and are there any specific benefits to working for a bigger city than Lexington that you can just think of?
Well, yeah, I mean the benefits are that you have a lot more staff to do things. You have staff who specialize in certain areas. In a small organization like Lexington, we have very few staff and the same basic responsibilities as the larger jurisdictions. So you just have to have a little bit of expertise in a lot of different areas, and you don't have a specialist that might know about one sort of thing. For instance, in Lexington, we don't have a public information officer. In Fairfax City, we had a public information office consisting of 3 staff. So here, our public information function is our department heads, basically. We do it ourselves, and in a lot of areas that's the case. So there are significant differences as far as size. Now, as far as what government gets involved in Fairfax, obviously in Northern Virginia, it's much more intense. The development is far more intense than down here. The speed at which things happen is far greater there than it is in Lexington. It's a lot. I don't want to say laid back, because there's always pressures to do a lot with very little, but it's a lot more laid back than Northern Virginia, certainly.
Okay, and you recently announced that Captain Alfred Thomas of the Lynchburg Police Department will become Lexington's new police chief. Why did you decide to choose Captain Thomas?
Well, first of all, it was an exceptionally difficult decision. We received 49 applicants for the position. Just narrowing that down to a group that was manageable to interview was a significant a significant job. And I feel that I eliminated some very, very qualified people, but I had to make a decision one way or another. And then we went through an interview process. It consisted of 2 interview panels. One was a panel of chiefs of police from 5 other jurisdictions, some experienced chiefs, the Charlottesville police chief, the Manassas police chief, Stanton, Waynesboro, and Vinton all participated with us. And they interviewed each of the candidates and gave me their evaluation of whether or not the person was ready or qualified to be the chief in Lexington. Then we had another panel that consisted of city residents, and we tried to get representation from major groups in the community. Washington Lee, for instance, had a representative, and VMI had a representative. Our school system, the superintendent of our schools participated. We had a community activist involved, and they interviewed the candidates to try to give me some advice on who they thought would be the best fit for Lexington. And so I received the input from both of those panels, and it was remarkably similar. They really narrowed it down to the same couple of people. And then I sat down with the top 2 candidates and talked to them at length. And I just felt that Captain Thomas had the best experience in working in a similar college situation in Lynchburg. His area that he covered was Liberty University, and he had an extensive experience dealing with that. He had extensive experience in community policing concepts, which we're very interested in. And he's really a young up-and-comer. I mean, he's got a great deal of potential. He really wants to move to a small town and become part of a small community, and I thought he'd fit very well into Lexington.
Okay, and are there any new specific initiatives you would like to see Captain Thomas undertake or make progress with as Chief of Police?
No, I don't have any specific initiatives. We've got some issues certainly in the department that he needs to take a look at and provide his perspective on. And I will expect him to do that and recommend some things, but I don't want to prejudge as to what those recommendations might be.
Can you talk a little bit more about what some of those issues are?
I think there's a perception. The issues, I think, are as much perception as anything else. There's a perception in the community, from some areas of the community, that our police department is very heavy-handed and needs to present a friendlier image. I think the new chief will have to come in and evaluate that and determine whether or not there is some validity to it and what types of programs we might be able to do to alleviate that concern. One of the things that when we had the community meetings that I know you were at a number of months ago, the thing that jumped out at me was a statement from, I believe it was the president of your student council, who indicated that by and large the students don't have a problem with the police department. They know what the expectations are and what their behavior should be. But there does seem to be a perspective that it is better to, if they have been drinking, it is better to get into a car and drive than try to walk back to campus or walk back to their apartment. And that's certainly not the perspective that we want to perpetuate. We clearly don't want that to happen, but if that's a perception, we need to deal with what that perception is so that it's clear that's not what we want.
Okay. I guess kind of elaborating more on this police issue. Just yesterday, Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors passed a stricter noise ordinance for the county. Does Lexington plan to do anything like that, or is the city fine with their noise ordinance? Do they see any problems with it?
Right now, we're very happy with our noise ordinance. Our police department does an excellent job of communicating with. I shouldn't classify students as a group, but with the students who have a different lifestyle than some of our other residents as to what the expectations are. And once we get across what those expectations are, we have very few problems. Students know when we come to the door and say you need to kind of quiet it down or shut it down that they need to do that. and they're aware of what the ramifications are if they don't. The county hasn't developed that relationship to the degree that we have because the students haven't lived out in the county for as long as they've lived in Lexington. So it's something that they're learning to deal with just like we did over the years.
Okay, switching gears a little bit here. In last week's city council meeting, the council decided to raise water rates 10%, which will affect the April 25th billing cycle. Why was this seen at this time as the only viable option?
Primarily because our revenues are dropping, and we can't impact revenues other than by rates. The amount of water that's consumed is the amount of water that's consumed, and that's it, and that revenue is dropping. On the other hand, the primary costs for providing both water and sewer services are fixed, whether they be in the capital costs of the plants that we have to build, or in the chemicals that we have to purchase to treat the water in the sewer, or the electricity that runs the pumps, or the personnel. We can't just eliminate personnel and reduce costs, because there are state guidelines and mandates as to how many people we have to have at any given time to operate a plant. So those costs are fixed. The crew that we have that fixes our water and sewer lines, we really can't reduce that. If we did, we'd let our water lines, once they break and leak, which all water lines do, we'd lose even more money because of lost water. If we don't try to keep fixing our sewer lines, which are old and leaky, we'll keep paying more and more in sewage treatment. And so the costs to save money are counterproductive.
Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us today on the on-record portion of the Rockbridge Report. I really appreciate it. So,
You're welcome.
And that's all we have for you this evening. I'm Katie Geddes with this week's edition of the on-record portion of the Rockbridge Report. Good evening.